there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. I am going to be having a whole lot of fun with this Art Impressions Giraffe pop-up card today. Now, this is a cool stamp and die set, so it comes with both. It comes with a stamp set with 5 stamps, and then it comes with all the matching dies for those. And this was one that I have been itching to play with ever since I got it. There is a whole series of these, but this little giraffe just called to me. So I am going to start off by using some Distress watercolor paper, the Tim Holtz watercolor paper, and I am going to show you a couple of different ways to use this giraffe today. So not only just as a pop-up feature. So I grabbed half a sheet of that larger sheets of cardstock. You can also get them in the handy size, the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch, which I also buy. I use this watercolor paper a lot when I am watercoloring or even just normal coloring, or if anything that I am ink blending, I use this watercolor paper. It's a beautiful bright white, which is important to me. So I have popped this in a stamping tool and I'm going to stamp it with some VersaFine Onyx black ink. I am going to heat emboss this just to make my life a little bit easier. Now I have also put on a little bit of anti-static powder tool because that way none of the embossing powder will stick where I don't want it to. And I'm also going to stamp out the 2 little drinks that this giraffe guy comes with. So I wasn't 100% sure which ones I wanted to use of these, so I thought I might as well just stamp out both of them and I can decide later on. I did a couple of stamps of this so that it was a really nice dark image, and then just moved my paper along a little bit and made sure that I can fit a whole nother giraffe stamped next to him. So do the same process again, and because this is a pigment ink, it stays wet for long enough that I am able to heat emboss with it. So add some embossing powder and then melt that powder. Pigment inks stay on top of your paper, on top of the surface, whereas dye inks sink into your paper, and that's why we're able to emboss with pigment inks. So I'm adding over some superfine clear embossing powder. I don't want to change the color at all. I just want to make it so it's got that nice wee wall when I do a little bit of coloring for these giraffes. So I'm going to melt all of that, and it's always really fun to watch this kind of nice bright black appear, and it makes it a little bit shiny too, which I also like. And then as for coloring in these guys, I mean, you can use any media that you have. There is no right or wrong. I am just looking at the package that it came in, and I don't have too many brown inks, so I'm pretty much just going to use this vintage photo ink. And the one good thing about using a water brush and some water reactive ink is that I can add layers of brown to make it darker or lighter and add less or more water. So I'm starting off here. I am going to go through this kind of quickly because, I mean, as I said, you can use any media at all. You could use coloring pencils, you can use felts, you can use alcohol markers, you can use paints, you could use inks, anything that you have that you feel comfortable coloring. You don't have to do it one way or another at all. But I also wanted to show you with this stamp set, although it is a pop-up stamp set, and that is one feature that I did love about it, I also want to use it on the front of my card just plain. I don't want to always have to use the pop-up feature of something, and that's really important to me when I invest in a stamp set, that I don't just have to use it one way or how it was specifically meant to be used by the designer. So I like to get value for money and think of other ways that I can use him as well. So when I'm coming to the spots on the giraffe, I did decide I wanted them to be slightly darker, so I'm going to add a tiny little bit of black soot there on the side of my little acrylic block, and I'll just show you there's just a tiny wee bit. So I'm going to mix that with some of the brown, and that will make a darker brown for me, because as I said, I don't have very many brown inks at all, and this vintage photo one is honestly really one of the most popular brown inks that I use at all in all of my crafting, so it's done me well. And I have a water brush here that I'm just going back to add his spots a little bit darker, and you'll see that I'm just doing kind of half the spot at the moment, and then when I come back in, all I'm doing is I'm not adding any ink, I'm just moving the ink that is there so that the entire spot is slightly browner than the rest of his body. So I'm kind of just going around adding in a couple of little shadows and making sure I haven't missed anything. I've got his horns at the top a little bit darker as well. And then I did remember that the inside of his ears are there. So for that I am going to add a little bit of Victorian velvet just as a pink. And that's purely because it was on my table. I mean, you could pick up any pink ink and I'm sure that it would be absolutely fine. It was just sitting there ready to go. So it became the inside of his ears. And I'm going to leave his eyes nice and white. And that is my giraffe all coloured in. So I'm going to fast forward here to where I coloured in some of the drinks. I've coloured in both of the giraffes and they are nice and dry, ready for me to die cut one of them. So I'm going to get out the dies. As I said, there is matching dies for the drinks and the giraffe. So all I'm going to do to pull them apart, I kind of just twist them. These ones I didn't need wire cutters or anything like that. I didn't need snips. I was able to just twist them all apart, which is nice and easy. Now the die that comes with it also has the kind of scoring marks that you need to make it pop up. Now you can see all of those in the middle, and for that reason I am going to fussy cut out the other giraffe, which honestly took me no time at all. It's all straight edges, so that doesn't bother me, and as I said, I like to get value for money. Now I'm moving on to something completely different here. I've got some Twisted Citron, some Mowed Lawn, and some Rustic Wilderness, which is the new colour out. I'm adding a little bit of water and then popping down a piece of watercolour paper just to create a background that I am going to use with some leaves. Now I bought a couple of things at scrapbook.com, and one of them was the Sizzix Thinlits, and it's called Leaf Print. So they are what I am going to use today, and I'm kind of figuring them out for myself because they can be used in so many different ways, and I really wanted to invest in a good set of leaves. I use them often and I use them in so many projects. So I will give you a really quick overview of these today, but honestly, any leaves that you have, anything that you want to add in would be absolutely fine for this. You don't have to have these at all. So I am just creating some backgrounds, and I added a little bit of the Pine Needles Oxide colour in there as well, just to darken it up. And here are the Thinlits that I was talking about. It comes with 8 kind of separate dies, and there are so many different ways to use them. If you use them together or separately, they all create different kind of looks, which I was really impressed with. So that's why I chose to go with these ones. So you'll see them featuring a bit in my channel. So each one kind of has an inside and then an outside die. So if I die cut them together, then it creates kind of a skeleton, like you can see at the top of the page there. And then if I die cut one of them separately, I kind of get just the outside leaf. And if you die cut the other one separately, you kind of get the negative look on your paper. So I've got a project coming up using these again, so you'll see them feature a little bit, but I die cut all of these out, and I will show you how I go about kind of colouring them and putting them together quickly. So these are the Rustic Wilderness, the Mowed Lawn, and then the Vintage Photo are the colours that I'm going to use. In fact, I end up just using the Mowed Lawn and the Vintage Photo. I want the skeleton of the leaf to kind of look a little bit different from the background, and I'm adding just a little bit of ink around the outside, a little bit of green, just to kind of darken up those edges and colour up those edges a little bit more. Then I am going to add a little bit of Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and I will pop that down on my non-stick sheet, and I'm just using a makeup sponge to dab the back of the skeleton so that I can pop it on the leaf, and that is how I'm going to create them. So I'll show you a couple and then I'll just move on because this is just a really similar process for all of the leaves. I did a couple of different shapes, but there are 4 different styles of leaves in the packet. Anyway, moving on to the next part of the card, I have a white panel here which measures 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and I have a green cardstock which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And then I have 2 of the oval dies from the Hero Arts Infinity Dies set. One is just 1 step bigger than the other. And I'm doing the smaller oval on the white cardstock, and I'm not lining that up too much in the center, but the green one here, I'm trying to get this nice and centered because this will become the front of my card. And I always hold it down with the low-tack tape, the mint tape. This is my favorite. I tried out so many low-tack tapes, and by far this was my favorite. So that's my recommendation as far as low-tack tapes go, which I searched high and low for a long time to find the one that I liked. Now I'm taking some squeezed lemonade and some twisted citron, so just kind of a yellow and a green color, because this will be the background of everything that we're kind of doing. Now I don't need to worry about the edges because they will be covered up with the ovals that we die cut before, but I wanted a nice kind of graduation of color from yellow to green, which is really easy to blend these two colors together. I am using the domed foam blenders, which are the best that I have found for blending ink. However, as I said, this doesn't have to be too fussy because it's going to be in the background anyhow. Then I'm adding over a stencil just for a little bit of interest. Again, this is not where your eyes are going to be focusing, but it's nice to kind of put in a little bit of effort because I'm putting so much effort into this card as well. It's time to kind of start putting everything together. So this is the giraffe that I fussy cut out. It was nice and quick, and I'm going to add a little bit of skinny foam tape to the back of the green oval. So this is the one that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and it will cover up my entire card front. And I wanted there to be that nice matting layer of the white just to break up some of the green that's going to be on the page. So I'm removing the release tape from the double-sided foam tape and then popping it down on that oval. I want my giraffe to be hanging upside down, so I'm going to make sure to pop him in first. And he was actually a little bit too long, so I just snip a little bit off the end. And he's kind of having a party, hanging around, hanging at the party upside down, and that's what I wanted this little giraffe to be doing. So I have popped him in between the two layers. I'll add a little bit of liquid glue and pop this down onto my card, so everything just has one thin layer of foam tape in between it, which makes the card not too bulky at all. Now I love my little giraffe hanging around, but I did want to secure him down just a little bit more. So it's kind of easy. I probably should have done this first, but I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape behind each one of his legs. I really love this foam tape because it's nice and easy to cut into really fine slithers, which I do all the time. And again, it's just really handy to have a good pair of non-stick scissors for that. But other than that, I'm able to pop this foam tape behind my giraffe, and now he's nice and stable and in place. Now it's time to put a bit of greenery around my giraffe friend, so I'm just going to kind of place these all around the place, hanging here and there and everywhere, and then once I have them in place I will glue them down with some matte medium. This is a really nice strong glue, and I love it because it doesn't leave any shine if I move things around or if some squeezes out the sides, and that's important because I change my mind, and that's part of the reason why I use liquid glue, so that I can shift things around and I have that time to adjust them. So that's what I like about the matte medium from Ranger. Now I'm just going to put that aside to dry before I cut off all of the edges. I'm using the Cheers stamp that comes in the stamp set with the giraffe, and I'm just going to cut that out nice and plain and simple, just using some scissors, and then I'm going to edge it just with a little bit of green ink, so it's just not quite so stark white, because it will go on the front of the card. And then I have another sentiment which will go in the middle of the card with the pop-up. So I'm going to put a little bit of liquid glue and then a tiny wee piece of foam tape that just needs to go at one end, and that will help it sit up in the middle of my oval. So that will go down the side. And then, as I said, the pop-up portion of the giraffe is really easy to create because all of the scoring marks make it so easy to kind of know which way he folds. Art Impressions do have a really nice YouTube video on their YouTube channel, and that explains exactly how to fold it if you're not sure, but I didn't need to go and look at it before I put this one together because it was really kind of simple to figure out. So I know there's a couple of different ways to do this and a couple of extra fold marks if you need them, but I just found the nice simple way was really easy. So you can see that all I need to do is add a little bit of strong double-sided tape to either of those little pieces, and it's obvious to me that the fold down the center of the giraffe needs to line up with the center fold of the card as well. So I just line that up, make sure that it's nice and even, and I have these two little corners with the double-sided tape, and that will hold down my little giraffe onto the card. So I line him up, and I want to make sure his head is not poking out the top of the card, so I've kind of got him roughly in the middle, and then he is all ready to go. So this is so fun. This is a normal standard size 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card, and this little giraffe fits in him perfectly. So I was really pleased that I didn't have to make kind of an extra big card or anything. Then I'm going to put the "Here's to You" stamp right beside my little giraffe. I love the look on his face. It kind of makes me smile every time I see it. And then one of these little drinks that I coloured and die cut out in the beginning, I will glue down just beside it. So this way I've got a really nice decorated card on the front, and then the inside also has the pop-up surprise as well. Now I'll be using this stamp set again. I love this giraffe and I don't always want to make a pop-up card, but I did super enjoy creating this one today. I'm going to add a little bit of glitter and sparkle to the kind of skeleton part of the leaves and not add too much else. I do add a little bit of glaze pen to his eyes and to his hooves. But apart from that, I really enjoyed making this card, and I hope that you have enjoyed seeing it being created. I will leave links to everything in the description box down below. But apart from that, thank you so much for joining me today, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!